Good morning, everybody. Happy holidays. Welcome in to Group Chat Football Live, a special edition early show today. Got a busy couple days here, of course, with the holidays, but appreciate you all for joining us today on Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz alongside D Money as usual, and the portal does not stop for anything. It is a dead period, but there is still some movement here. A bunch of commitments here over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a dead period, even with Christmas on the way. So a lot of people open up their presents early, especially, Big Ten, SEC. The rich keep getting richer. You see why teams like Ohio State are putting up so many points against Tennessee. It's not just recruiting. It is also impact portal additions.
And one of the interesting things to track from this portal run the last couple weeks, D, of course, the quarterback carousel. Everyone wants to figure out these starting quarterbacks. They're moving all over the place, but there's been a really intriguing market for young quarterbacks, guys who are big recruits coming out, maybe, the faded five-star, we like to call them. And great example in that is Air Noland, who has made his decision, as he announced yesterday, that he's transferring to South Carolina. Former top 60 recruit, was at Ohio State this last season, was extremely highly sought after coming out, over a year ago out of the Atlanta area, was the number 7 quarterback in the country. Of course, we understand Ohio State's situation over there. Will Howard started this year, Julian Sayin as the backup quarterback, another highly touted guy coming out of high school. But with Air Noland here deciding to go to South Carolina, he's saying, look, I understand Lenore Sellers is the man right now. South Carolina has some great momentum this season. Obviously, new offensive coordinator there with Mike Shula taking over the play calling duties. He was on staff this year, so you shouldn't have too much change offensively. But Air Noland saying, look, I'll sit behind Lenore Sellers for, even though he has multiple years of eligibility. Hopefully for him, he's thinking it's a year sitting there, learning, doing what he has to do. And it's a nice opportunity for him at a program with some talent around him.
Yeah, he goes to South Carolina. Lenore Sellers, someone who developed quite a bit from last year to this year. Coach Mike Shula was a part of that. He was, dull against Appalachian State, but Coach Shula, part of it, elevated now to offensive coordinator. So you look at the development of Sellers. If you're Air Noland, we use the term faded 5-star. I guess Nolan more like a faded 4-star. He's a high 4-star player out of the Atlanta area, 6'2", 192, lefty. The way he played, Pete, kind of reminded me of Tua Tagovailoa. Just quick decision-making. You see the way he distributes the ball, the accuracy. He's not going to overpower you with arm strength, but he had a very, very good team at Langston Hughes in Atlanta. They were a dominant program, and he was distributing the ball to his playmakers. He's a 6A player of the year. Very, very quick in the RPO game, quick with his fakes, quick in his footsteps. Again, I'm not saying he is Tua, but he is that type of distributor, more of your point guard player, different player than Sellers, who's such a physical specimen. So you go to South Carolina, you talk about Dante Reno, Cutter Woods, the freshman. I think Nolan slides in as number 2 right away. He has 4 years to play for, didn't play at all for Ohio State. I think Julian Sayin passed him, which, look, time will tell if that was the right move. We don't have to go far to see Ohio State playing time decisions not working out. Joe Burrow, the most famous example, Ohio State signee, outperformed by Dwayne Haskins early in his career, splitting time with Tate Martell. Remember that name, who was getting snaps over him at times as sort of a specialist backup. Joe Burrow, of course, goes to LSU, becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the world. Not saying it's going to happen with Air Noland. I'm just saying those Ohio State quarterback battles, sometimes there's very talented guys that don't succeed there. Kyle McCord, another example, who started and was basically run out of town, goes to Syracuse, one of the top passers in the country at Syracuse in the ACC, actually led the country in passing yards. So we will see where this goes for South Carolina. I think it was a good decision by Nolan, going somewhere where there's a clear path to development. There's some stability there at South Carolina, finally, with the success that they've had. Coach Beamer looks solid there. He's been recruiting well. And Shula, the new offensive coordinator, but not a new system. just sort of being elevated. You play behind a guy who's probably going to go pro in a year in Sellers, assuming everything goes right. I think it makes a lot of sense.
And that's what I was going to ask you. It's an interesting situation because Sellers was a redshirt freshman this year, multiple years of eligibility. We see how important in today's day and age the reps at the college level for a quarterback in their development. So you're essentially saying, if you're Shane Beamer, that look, we expect Sellers to be gone after this year to the next level. Obviously, with the portal era, you never know what's going to happen. So there is an insurance element involved here as well. But I think that's an interesting situation here.
Yeah. Again, who knew that Sellers was even going to be talked about as potentially the best quarterback in the country heading into 25. I certainly didn't think that going into the season or after the first couple of games, but with the way he's finished, he's going to have a case to be the best quarterback in the country next year, both in college and potentially as a pro prospect. So number one, that speaks to development that Dole Loggins, who's again now at Appalachian State, but also the Coach Beamer at the top, and then Mike Shula playing a role. They develop Sellers that way. Nolan steps right in. Much different type of player. Not going to run like Sellers. Not going to be that physical presence, but someone who can distribute the ball. Maybe more comparable to a Spencer Rattler. But even then, Spencer Rattler had that huge arm. He could be a little late and still make the throw just off of talent and arm strength. I think Nolan's the kind of guy, he's like Tua. He's got to be on time, but he's often on time. He plays with great timing. And he's urgent in his drops. He's urgent in his play fakes. He gets rid of it quick and throws an accurate ball with a lot of anticipation. So yeah, maybe it's just the lefty factor that's distorted me. But when you go back and watch his highlights, which is all we really have to go off because he didn't play at Ohio State, that's the kind of player you see. South Carolina continue to recruit well, put some receivers around Aaron Nolan in the future, and he'll be able to distribute the ball.
Yeah, intriguing one for the future there. Definitely going to be tracking that situation with him and Sellers there. So,
and by the way, first name Prentice, if they're at,
yes.
Not Air's just a nickname. So South Carolina fans, Prentice Nolan, but they call him Air.
Appreciate everyone who's on with us live right now. Brandon, thank you for your support as always. Again, this is Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz. This is D Money here with me. We'll be going live on Canes Insight after this as well, doing our normal Canes show there. But this is our other page where we talk national transfer portal movement. Hit that like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Brandon says, isn't Sellers a freshman? Yeah, he's a redshirt freshman, so he'll be a redshirt sophomore next year. And that's what's very interesting about this, man. But it's becoming more – we keep saying how everything's becoming NFL-like in terms of the way that the player movement is with NIL and things of that nature. But the roster structure is really becoming NFL-like as well when you talk about these backup quarterbacks, every position in general. But, like, you have to stockpile quarterbacks. If you don't have a good backup quarterback at the NFL level, you're in trouble, right? That's on the GM if you don't have that depth there. It's becoming like that in college as well. You almost – yes, you would love to say, let's just have the young guy there behind him, but you got to build quality depth there.
Yeah, and honestly, I think sometimes college does it better than the pros in this portal era, but certainly you're in the SEC. He'd be a young player now. He hasn't played yet, but he does have the year of development at Ohio State. He's physically mature, and I think he's an improvement over what you had with Reno and Woods.
Speaking of physically mature players, good pickup overnight here for Notre Dame as Malachi Fields, wide receiver from UVA, announced that he will be headed there for his 5th year. So you're talking about a guy with a ton of experience, very, very productive, and definitely not a one-year wonder. This is now 2 years in a row here where he's had almost identical seasons at UVA. In 2023, 58 receptions, 811 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then this past season, 55 catches, 808 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And for a big body receiver, averages over 14 yards a reception. So this is a guy who can stretch the field for you vertically, brings you that big physical element in the passing game. And Notre Dame, a team that it's going to look different offensively next season, but they're starting to put some weapons together for that offense.
Yeah, and you look at Notre Dame, the last time they had a receiver go over 50 receptions, that's Chase Claypool back in 2019. So 250-plus yard reception seasons in a row for Malachi Fields, top 10 in the ACC in receiving yards. And I think you look at what he brings to the table. Obviously, look, he's a fifth-year player. He's not in the pros. I think part of that is because he doesn't have the speed and dynamic separation ability, maybe that the pros covet. But for what Notre Dame's trying to do, where you're going to run the ball, and then go to your wide receivers for, maybe a big play action play downfield, trying to convert a third and long when you do get behind the sticks, which is rare. He has the ability to do that. Obviously, red zone receptions as well. 6'4", 220. We've seen him down here in the ACC quite a bit. A lot of diving catches, a lot of contested balls, very fluid. That's really his game. He's not going to be your separator. He's not going to be your dynamic run after the catch threat. But physically mature, mentally mature. He's a fifth-year player. I mean, this guy's born and bred UVA. He went to Monticello High School. He's from Charlottesville. He did his time there 4 years, and now is a grad transfer. So he's bringing in that maturity to Notre Dame. He's not one of these guys that's bounced around a lot of places. He should be a culture fit. You lose Bo Collins, you lose Chris Mitchell, you lose Jaden Harrison. I think this guy steps right in. Your first game's against Miami, Florida down here. He's someone who's been a productive receiver in the ACC. He can give you what you need if you expect third downs, contested catches. If you expect, the second coming of Justin Margie, I don't think you're going to get that here, but you are going to get a very, very good, reliable player. By the way, he's somebody who played against Notre Dame, 4 catches, 81 yards.
Yeah, those are the clips that I was just playing there.
Yeah, so someone's seen him. They've seen what he can do. They've seen how he can separate against their defensive backs. They've seen how he can catch the football. They see how he moves at that size. So I think, look, if you're comparing him to what they had this year, I think he is a better receiver, a better pass catcher than those three. The three guys that are gone, plus some of their younger players. I think just in terms of the ability to catch the football at his size, he's a level above what Notre Dame has on the roster.
Yeah, and again, the consistency is really impressive, D. I mean, you're looking at a guy who started the 2023 season with 6 straight 60-yard games, and 11 out of the 12 games he played in that year had 60 yards, right? So this is a guy that's not going to disappear. He's a consistent threat for you. Sometimes these receivers can be kind of boom or bust, but this is a guy that, with that size, he's not going to just disappear in the middle of a game.
Yeah, and he's experienced, right? Like, he's fifth-year player, entering his 5th year. The only reason he's not in the NFL is, I don't want to speak for him, but I think it's just those speed concerns. But the guys, I don't see any character issues. 4 years at Virginia, productive. He's going to be where he needs to be. He's smart. He's picked up different offensive schemes at Virginia because there's been turnover during his tenure there. So he should adapt to what Notre Dame's trying to do and be what you want as a Notre Dame player. Again, UVA, elite academic institution. You can't just take everybody at Notre Dame. This is someone coming in from that background. And I think he's going to be ready to play. It just depends on what you expect from him. If you expect him to revitalize and rejuvenate your passing game, if you expect him to run after the catch, like, for example, Chase Claypool, who we mentioned earlier, he's not that type of player. He's not going to make those dynamic plays after the catch like a Claypool. But 50-plus catches 2 years in a row, he can do that for you. And I think it's a nice fit for what Notre Dame likes in their wide receivers.
Chain mover, red zone. I mean, you really like to have a weapon like that offensively if you're an offensive coordinator and if you're a quarterback.
Highly coordinated. Again, this guy, we're ACC country down here. Every time you watch ACC football, he's making diving catches, sliding catches. He is just a very smooth type of receiver with a lot of contested catch ability.
Another guy with a lot of contested catch ability here, Max Clare, former Purdue tight end, announced that he's headed to Ohio State. He was the top tight end in the transfer portal, and this is someone who had a ton of interest. We've talked about him here on Group Chat Football Live multiple times. Ohio State obviously wins the recruiting battle here, but Texas, Michigan, Louisville, Texas A&M. I know Clemson showed some interest as well. So you're talking about a dynamic tight end here, 51 receptions, 685 yards, 4 touchdowns, played basketball in high school, multi-sport athlete at tight end. You're always looking for that. And Ohio State, as we'll talk about here, this is not the only guy that they picked up on the offensive side of the ball. Reloading here with weapons offensively. And Max Clare is a great start.
Yeah, this Ohio State really loaded up. We'll talk about CJ Donaldson in a second, but Clare was the top tight end in the portal. I think consensus when you talk to people in the college game and just you watch him, he fluid, smooth mover, 6'4", 240, nice route runner, can sink his hips. He's not even going back to his college tape, he had look at this juke right here. You can go back to his high school tape. He had very good route running and it was advanced in that area. Playing football at St. Xavier in Cincinnati, some of the best football in the country played in Cincinnati. Now, Clare himself is actually not an Ohio guy. He is from Guilford, Indiana, which is just right on the outskirts of Cincinnati on the Indiana side. Cincinnati is, it borders Kentucky, Indiana. So he's on the Indiana side, not quite an Ohio guy, but played his high school ball in Cincinnati and didn't have a huge game against Ohio State this year, only 2 catches for 13 yards, but obviously they could have seen the fluidity and the route running and the talent here. Ohio State's known for producing guys that are complete tight ends that play a long time in the pros, guys with strength, guys with physical tools, guys that can block. They haven't had that true, top of the country tight end in terms of receiving, right? They've had draft top tight ends in the and depending on some of these other pieces, you're obviously going to have Jeremiah Smith coming back next year as the top wide receiver in the nation, probably the top player overall in the nation. Clare potentially can be that number 2. We'll see how some of their other receivers develop, but he's the kind of guy that he has that level of talent where he could potentially be your number 2 option. Even if the stats don't show it necessarily, he could be the second guy you're looking for because look at how quickly he separates. There you see in the red zone, that shake at the top of his break. That's, I think, what makes him different, than other tight ends is that ability to sink his hips, the small feet. He's a true receiver. He's not taking these giant strides. He's not clunky when he's trying to gear down. He is very smooth and athletic. The basketball background, I think, helps out there. But that's really what he brings to the table. I think in the red zone, look, Jeremiah Smith's going to get a lot of attention in this area as he is the best receiver. To me, he's the best receiver in the country right now as a true freshman. Obviously, we've seen Jeremiah Smith's whole career down here in Miami, Florida. But this could be a very nice compliment to Smith going forward when you need a first down, when you need a red zone conversion. There's still upside here. I think physical development, still not the biggest, strongest tight end is Clare. He could get a little stronger. Even if he's going to be a receiving tight end, he's a little bit lean, a little bit light, still more of that finesse kind of basketball player. Put some body armor on him over this offseason, get him ready for a conference he's already familiar with, right? He's a Big Ten player to start. But getting ready for that next level of production and expectation that an Ohio State player brings. Just this comment here. This is from Max Clare, why he chose Ohio State. He said, just an opportunity to win a national championship and develop into a better player and play against the best competition day in and day out. He wants to be around a lot of like-minded individuals that are going to push me to be my best. Certainly, if you talk about coverage linebackers, Ohio State churns those guys out every single year. And safeties, we don't have to talk about the safety tradition at Ohio State. I think the guys he's going to be going to go up against in practice, certainly more than we saw at Purdue, and really going to help him be a better player.
And Max Clare was not the only pickup for Ohio State. Another big one on the offensive side of the ball, and this is someone that you and I are familiar with, having watched him at the high school level, and he's had a tremendous first few years of his collegiate career at West Virginia, as CJ Donaldson is headed to the Buckeyes. This guy's a versatile playmaker, played tight end, really like an H-back tight end at the high school level down here in Miami. And at West Virginia, burst onto the scene as a freshman right away, as a running back, right? As a guy who was really a touchdown scorer for West Virginia, has 30 career touchdowns, has dealt with some injuries, but seems like he's good to go for Ohio State. And someone, again, who brings a pop to the backfield, 6'2", about 240 pounds. He's not going to be running a 4.3 or anything like that, But you talk about a guy who really has a knack, really good patience, vision, and someone that I think could fit in really nicely as a piece for this Ohio State offense.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you, Corey, in the comments. It's funny. So CJ Donaldson, we used to know him as DeCarlo Donaldson earlier in his career down here in Miami. Played at Gulliver, also played at Hialeah. I don't know why I changed DeCarlo Donald. That was a cooler name, I thought. But anyways, you see, we turn on the TV here as people who follow recruiting here in Miami, and we see this running back, CJ Donaldson for West Virginia, say, who is that? And he said, oh, wait, that's DeCarlo Donaldson, the tight end prospect from Miami. So it was very interesting to see him emerge as that great running back, because here you see his high school highlights. He's lined up wide, skilled route runner, see him adjust to the ball. I mean, everybody expected him to be a pass catcher coming out. And the reason is that's how he was used. You see him, again, lining up wide, and you see the finesse. This is someone who's on the 7-on-7 circuit as well. So he's very, very experienced running routes and catching the football against Division I caliber defensive backs. But of course, he has that added dimension, which you see a little bit here on this end around. And this is what he's been at Washington State. He's been a runner
at West Virginia.
Sorry, West Virginia. I'm losing it. But yeah, this is what he's been at West Virginia, has been running the football. And you see him returning a kick here. Physical back, patient back at West Virginia. You know, not the most explosive, although as a freshman, he was a lot more explosive, had an 80-yard run as a freshman, been much more of a between the tackles back the last 2 years. I think when you look at Ohio State, they have the ability to do more with him, in my opinion, because you have a lot of quality backs that you recruit every year. Obviously, you're going to lose a couple here to the draft, but you're always going to have guys that can run the football. He is one of them. But to me, if you really want to unlock CJ Donaldson in a way that maybe West Virginia was unable to, use him as a receiver. He has that ability. And look, if they want to treat him like a receiver and play another defensive back like a nickel, you motion him right there into the backfield and hand him the ball. Because of his ability to run with power, but also run routes and catch the ball, he has a constant matchup problem, particularly in the red zone. Because again, if he's a single back and you're saying, all right, they're going to run it with him, power form, power back, we're down in the red zone. If you match up with a linebacker, he can go out wide and embarrass that linebacker. If you play that pass threat with the smaller player, he's going to run with power against a lighter box and lighter personnel. So because of that, he is a mismatch, and we didn't see that necessarily at West Virginia. I mean, he was getting 10 catches a year at West Virginia, even though he's a featured player. So that's one area of his game that I would like to see unlocked at Ohio State, because those of us who have seen him since high school know he has that in his bag, and it didn't necessarily get shown at West Virginia.
Well, I would imagine that because a lot of these NIL moves, not NIL moves, all these transfer moves, everyone can say, look, it's NIL driven, but there are a good amount of these that are driven by, well, how can you help me develop and get me to the next level? I would imagine that part of Ohio State's pitch, because look, for the next level, Donaldson's a guy that I would imagine these NFL teams look at how you're describing him, someone you get involved in the passing game, you use a variety of different ways, and that I would imagine have to have been one of the main pitches from Ohio State here.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's a good fit for him. His running style fits the conference. He's a physical back, right? So it's not just the athletic ability, versatility, and size, because sometimes you get big backs that don't want to run physical. He's not afraid to run physical. He'll run you over. He'll stiff arm you. He plays to his size. He just also has a little more. I'm curious if he can get that explosive playing with a better offensive line, playing with a better passing game. Because as freshman at West Virginia, he was over 6 yards a carry and 80-yard run. He had multiple long runs that year. It's gone down as his roles increased. Can he do more at Ohio State? I think he could. But to me, a very nice pickup. He's definitely an Ohio State caliber player. Is he going to be as dynamic a runner as Judkins and Henderson? I don't think that's him, but you can use him in different ways than those guys. And if you unlock everything that he's capable of, he could be a comparable impact player, because he does things that those guys do not do.
Yeah, I like this pickup a lot. And Ohio State, man, great day for them between Donaldson and Max Clare. they're reloading. So we'll see. Obviously, going to be a new quarterback over there, but I really like what they've done these last couple of days, and I'm sure they're not done yet. So we'll continue to track that. But let's take a look at their friends over in Ann Arbor, as they made a signing here at the quarterback position yesterday that I don't know if it's a surprise. I think most people understood that they were in the market for a veteran quarterback, understanding that Bryce Underwood was going to be coming in here, and they're bringing in someone very experienced. Mikey Keene has played at both UCF and Fresno State. 65 career touchdowns, over 8,000 yards in his career. Fresno State just won 6 games this season, went to a bowl game. He did not play in that bowl game. So he's going to be playing now at Michigan with an opportunity to compete for a starting spot, I'd imagine, here with Bryce Underwood. That was the pitch to him. Look, come in and kind of be the mentor to him as a guy who's played a lot of football. And look, if he was playing quarterback for them this season, who knows what it would have looked like, because obviously they needed some competence there in the passing game. And it's an interesting one with all the experience that he has.
Yeah, he's been around the country, right? So he's from Chandler, Arizona, goes to UCF here in Florida, then back over to Fresno State, now to Michigan right there in the middle. 5'11", 200, undersized player. You watch his film, quick in everything he does, quick release, quick decisions, quick feet. Had success at UCF, like you mentioned, 8-3 as a starter. Had success at Fresno as well. I think the interceptions is really where he ran into trouble. 11 INTs. Interesting. So he played Michigan this year. He's 22 of 36, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, one of which is a pick 6 to Will Johnson, which is, he's a pretty good player there. Top 10 pick out of Michigan. But to me, there's levels, right? So Bryce Underwood, obviously, if he hits, you were talking about an elite player. He's the number 1 player in the country. He's been the number 1 player since he's a kid. Billy Edwards, who Michigan was originally looking at to compete with Underwood, to me is a really solid Big Ten starting quarterback. Ended up going to Wisconsin, which is probably a smart move for him in terms of being much more solidified as a starting quarterback in the Big Ten. So he goes there, and he's able to be the starter without worrying about the number 1 overall player in the country making millions of dollars looking over his shoulder. With Keene, I think if you put him in the Big Ten level, I do think, Billy Edwards, he's probably a more solid bet to be a starting quarterback at that level. He was at Maryland before. He's got that body type. Keene was a little more risk, but if you compare Keene to what you had, with Orgy, some of these guys last year, Warren, this is a better player, right? He's more productive. He's a more natural passer. He just has more to him from a production standpoint, from a skill set standpoint, than those guys did. So is he going to be as good as Billy Edwards, who you're originally potentially looking at to be this bridge quarterback? I don't know. He could be, right? He could be. It depends on how his game translates to the Big Ten level. You don't know. But I do think he's going to give you a much more dynamic threat than what you had last year, running and passing. And if Bryce Underwood beats him out, it's going to be a real feather in the cap to Underwood to beat out someone who's experienced and productive, not just somebody who's there to be, a jobber, right, and lay down for you. This is someone, if Underwood beats out Mikey Keene and wins the job, he earned that job. It wasn't just because of his salary. So I like the move. I thought Billy Edwards would have been maybe more of a true controversy, where he probably would have been tough for Underwood to ever unseat Edwards as a freshman if it's a straight competition. Whereas here, it's a closer battle. And either way, I think you're going to have much more production than what you had last year at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I likened it before when we spoke about Billy Edwards, and when there was the crystal ball to him going to Michigan, kind of like a potential DJ Lagway situation. Graham Mertz coming into the season was really solid quarterback, a guy who was a potential late round NFL draft pick, obviously got injured, and that kind of forced DJ Lagway into that starting role. But it was already kind of creeping towards that the way the Gators season was trending.
Yeah, and who knows how these things play out, right? You don't know. I mean, Mikey Keene could be a a legend at Michigan, right? With his playing style, he's a fun guy to watch. He's very quick. If he goes out there and he's winning ball games and Bryce Underwood is holding the clipboard or playing, specialty plays where he comes in and runs, then, that's on the table. Michigan has players around him that can allow to elevate the game. There's some uncertainty because he's never played at that level. UCF, Fresno State, so he's never been at that Power 4 level, certainly not at the level of team that just won the national championship a couple years ago. So we'll see how that is, but there's a potential for him to be the starter and be just a major improvement, elevate Michigan himself, and then hand off to Bryce Underwood. There's potential to him just be a good test for Bryce Underwood, or Bryce Underwood earns the job, potential for a platoon. There's a lot of things that could happen here with this situation, but you're improving your odds if you have two quarterbacks that you feel better about than what you had last year as opposed to just one of which being a freshman.
All right. So we talked earlier about the kind of category of faded 5-star quarterbacks, or maybe not 5-star, but these guys who were big time recruits coming out of high school at the quarterback position. And for whatever reason, it just didn't work out, and they need new fresh, landing space and a fresh start for them. I think there's kind of a similar category for these former 5-star big recruit edge rushers, as we see another one come off the board. Samuel Mpemba, transferring from Georgia to Texas A&M. This guy was a top 50 recruit in the 2022 class out of IMG Academy, and a guy who doesn't have a lot of production in his career, like we've seen with some of these edge rushers that have transferred early in this transfer portal cycle, but has the traits, has the length, 6'3", 250, twitchy, explosive. And if he can put it all together, of course, Mike Elko, background as one of the best defensive coaches in the country. Early returns have been really solid at Texas A&M, and we've seen them take chances on these high upside, really talented guys who just maybe haven't put it all together yet. I think Mpemba falls in that bucket.
Yeah, someone that we've known about for a while down here in Florida. He's originally from St. Louis, Missouri, but kind of burst on the scene at IMG, was a tight end and a defensive end. It's hard to ignore the body type. I mean, this guy looks exactly like you draw him up at the defensive end, edge rusher position. Very, very athletic, very quick, grew up playing soccer. The production at IMG was good. It was not dominant, which is not unusual. IMG has a lot of good players, but you could see the burst and physicality. He wanted to play hard, and there's a reason why he was a top 50 recruit with everybody in the country after him. I think when you look at Texas A&M, you say, okay, you had that era where you're just stockpiling 5-star players out of high school, spending a lot of money on these players, and then they go away. To me, I see a change where the way they evaluate is different. In some ways, just studying their high school class, I like how they're evaluating guys. They're getting really, really good football players that are still highly rated, but maybe aren't just the top of the ticket items. But then they're getting these elite body types from the portal, and these 5-star type players from the portal. When they've had a little dirt on them, they're going to come cheaper, I'm assuming, than they were out of high school, and Jimbo Fisher was paying top dollar. But you can develop them with Mike Elko. So, okay, we talk about Mpemba. Micah Hudson, the 5-star from Texas Tech. He's another one where he really didn't produce at Texas Tech as a freshman, but you're betting on his explosive traits to really elevate you. Julian Humphrey, he did play for Georgia. He started, but was benched, trending downwards in his career. But his size, his elite speed, you're talking about perfect NFL corner traits. Bring him in and rehabilitate him here. TJ Searcy, a solid player on the edge for University of Florida, but not a dominant player necessarily. He was a big recruit, top 100 recruit. Bring him in and see he can develop. So you're seeing the same kind of body types and athleticism that you had when you were signing 5-stars out of high school. Now you're just getting them a year removed or 2 years removed from when they signed with other teams. Again, you see Mpemba at tight end there earlier in his IMG career. He's an athlete, raw. They knew he was raw. Georgia has so many players at that position. I mean, you think about the guys that are rushing the passer for Georgia. These are first-round players pretty much across the board. So it's hard to see him developing and getting the reps he needs in that situation. Texas A&M's got good rushers too. You're losing a few to the NFL, foremost among them, Shamar Stewart, another guy that we watched for many, many years down here in Miami. who is probably going to go to the first round. And Pemba adds to a stockpile of pass rushers with ability. And I think it's a better fit for him. Another thing about Georgia is, Georgia doesn't just let these guys rip as far as the pass rushers. A lot of times they're going head up on tackles. They're playing more of a role. Look at Trayvon Walker, who's become more of a pass rusher in the NFL than he was in college. The role is different in Georgia. Obviously, it works for them. They're the best defense in the country over the past 5 years. But guys like Mpemba, who are raw athletes and want to just get after it, I think he's going to get unleashed a little bit more in what Mike Elko does than what Kirby Smart did at Georgia.
I expect things to continue to kind of, be what they've been here the last couple of weeks. It's you got the holidays, these next few days here, you got the last week of the year, and then the 28th, the portal officially closes for business. Of course, stays open 5 more days for these playoff teams. Anyone from those teams that want to enter have that 5-day window to do so. So we'll continue to track it. We're going to continue to go live here on Group Chat Football Live. Are we doing a show tomorrow? I think we're off tomorrow unless something crazy happens.
Well, you never know. We'll see. So appreciate everyone who's on live with us today. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and then Canes fans will be going live on Canes Insight shortly here, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate everyone for joining us today. Happy holidays. Like and subscribe. See you guys later this week.